We're going to hit the record button. You are now being recorded. Welcome to the Research Chefs kind of career chat that we're doing today. Over time, people have asked me about how they got into, or rather how I got into research and development, what a research chef does, and is this a viable career option for them? So instead of continually only sharing my story, firstly, that's what the Peas on Moss podcast is to do, is to bring your voices to more people and to share your experiences with them. So the next version of this is this recorded conversation where we're all kind of getting to share quickly about our experiences and about this career field. So welcome to each of you, and thank you for each of you, raising your hand and being available to share your insights. I'm really so grateful. Looking at each of your faces and names, it's like, oh, I can actually think about the moments that each of you has served as a mentor to me and a friend and a guide. So thank you in advance for offering that guiding light, if you will, to more people as well. So my name is Kimberly. I host the Peas on Moss podcast, which is a wordplay on mise en place. So anyone who has ever cut anything on a line will understand that mise en place is what you live and die by. Kind of that preparedness for your shift. And I kind of took a bigger picture for preparedness for life, which I'll just bust that bubble right now. You can't really be prepared for everything that gets thrown at you. And then preparedness in the corporate world as far as, project management goes, projects themselves. I don't think I've ever had a project go swimmingly in the sense of, how I wrote my project timeline and it all went exactly to plan. If any of you have had that happen, where it was just on point, please let us know and we will make you, I will buy you a really fine glass of wine. But for the rest of us, mise en place can go sideways quickly, and so that's why it's a wordplay on that. So it's not mise en place, it's peas on moss. So, okay, so in the upper corner, I have Chef Mark Florka. So we're going to start with you, please.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Mark Florka. I started off as a pastry chef. So I spent about 20 years in the hospitality industry working as a pastry chef and kind of unofficially working on the line a little bit here and there in some of the hotels and things that I've worked at as well. So I've gathered a wide variety of experience in working from small family-run pastry shop and cafe through convention centers, bakery chains, resorts, hotels, restaurants, and you name it, wholesale bakeries, all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of, through networking, is really how I fell into the corporate world, so to speak. Is that through networking, through, at the time, for me, it was the Canadian Pastry Chefs Guild, and through contacts who had other contacts who were looking for people, and my name came up. And so I ended up starting with what is now ADM. It was Maple Leaf Mills at the time when I started in Canada. And 3 years later, ADM bought the company. And I started off as a technical service rep, which basically meant I ran around troubleshooting flour problems and bakery mix problems in bakeries, mostly in Ontario, but all across Canada eventually. And then from there, kind of took on roles as product development manager and marketing and things like that. And then an opportunity in succession planning, I moved to the US at ADM's research facility in Decatur, Illinois. And so I looked after, there things evolved again. I took on a lot of culinary, and I looked after primarily all of the ingredient applications for bakery. So anything of the 750 some ingredients in the portfolio could end up at my desk depending on what the product manager's interests were or the customer or things like that. And then because they heard the word chef, it was like, oh, make us a lunch and do this and feature beans and feature fiber salt. And so I kind of fell into, using my culinary experiences from the past, and fortunately having a community college where I was teaching part-time that I could rely upon for help and support through students and the culinary director there. So that's kind of how it evolved for me. I'm now retired. I opted to take a early retirement package last year from ADM, and I have moved back to Canada. I'm now in Nova Scotia, so it's already 7 p.m. here. Cheers. um, and um, I still keep involved in the industry online. I'm the community manager for Bakerpedia for the community forum, and helping with different videos and things like that. We're doing a free seminar on shelf life next week that Dr. Lynn has asked me to help her with and participate in. And we do I do a weekly blog on Friday called Forum Fridays, where we just talk about things that are going on in the forum to help encourage conversations and to share knowledge. And I'm continuing my involvement with the Illinois Science and Technology Institute as well, where I help mentor high school students through the fall into March, roughly, where they have projects that they work on, and they use a platform called Mentor Matching Engine. So again, it's all online, and you have to go through a background check and everything else like that. So the teachers can see all of the communication with the students and through this Mentor Matching Engine, and it's a lot of fun. It's great to encourage young minds into kind of how to conduct research and to be prepared for the unexpected, Kimberly. Right? So you never know what's going to come. It doesn't always go the way you plan, right? So, and that's kind of, in a nutshell, my background and things, how I've ended up here.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Chef Barb Zotto, and welcome to Chef Barb.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces out there. Hi, my name is Barbara Zotto, and I started my career in New York City, cooking on the line in Manhattan after graduating from CIA. And after several years of that, I moved to Seattle to be a bigger fish in a smaller sea, which I became a bigger fish in a smaller sea, and had worked with Southwestern ingredients, fish, Seattle fresh produce. It was great. And then once I became a mom, I decided that I didn't want to, or really couldn't work all those nights and weekends. So then I started transitioning into the corporate world, and I started in food service as a district chef and kind of a sales oriented role. And I know exactly what you're saying, Mark. When they hear you're a chef, that's it. You're a chef to everybody, right? So I did that and was sought out and recruited by a large manufacturer, and did, again, more a technical sales role where I did a lot of training, so much training on product and development of product and how to use product. And interwoven in all of this was trend spotting and what was first and foremost, and how to help our customers make more money with our products. Very involved with that. I then made a little bit of a switch and worked in chocolate for a while, which was fun. And excuse me. And it did, again, a lot of trainings, worked with Belgium, worked with Europe. And this was when single origins were just starting to launch, and it was kind of a fun time to be involved with that product line, seeing everything that you possibly do with chocolate. It was a whole new world. And after that, I went back into savory, where I was culinary director for a food ingredient company, working with cookie wines and spirits and vinegar and chilies and all kinds of fun things. And this is where I did a lot of gold standard work, and again, working with customers to maximize their profits and their potential using our ingredients. And so I've wore a lot of hats, not only as a chef, but in sales and in product management and a little bit of marketing, even though I'm not a marketer. It just seems that it all kind of rolls into one after a while. And was very successful, did a lot. Also, I've been writing in a lot of journals. I've written in a lot of journals about trends and chilies and sweets and savories and all kinds of things. And now I am continuing to write. I'm also freelance consulting. I've also started to teach webinars that are helping maybe cooks or product developers or food technologists kind of bridge the gap into a sales career, and that's been fun. And I'm just kind of looking forward right now to COVID being over and getting back to normal. So I think everybody is probably there. So yeah, I've done many things, worked with many ingredients in my career, and I think always the goal is to help somebody maximize their potential and earnings on a particular product or a concept, and see how we can build it and scale it and launch it. And that's me.
Thank you, Chef Barbara. Okay, next up is Lindsay Perry.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces and names, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody who I haven't already met. Again, my name's Lindsay. I started my career in marketing. I started on the CPG side with Mondelez for a few years, and then I switched over to marketing on the food service side with a local restaurant in Chicago. And a few years into that, it hit me that I wanted to be the one creating the food instead of just marketing it. So I decided to go to culinary school. I did a program here locally in Chicago at Kendall College. And ever since then, I've been with Bell Flavors and Fragrances. I work on their savory side, but I also support the sweet team. And new today, I supported beverage with a lot of cocktails today. So it was a fun day. And that is me in a nutshell.
Okay, and next up is Christine Bisson.
Thank you. So I'm the odd member of the group here. I'm a registered dietitian, and I teach at a community college on the Central Coast of California, Allen Hancock College in northern Santa Barbara County. I coordinate our culinology program. So we have a 2-year program, and many of our graduates go directly into industry. Some transfer to 4-year schools to pursue the bachelor's degree in culinology or food science with an emphasis in culinology. So I'm mostly going to be a listener today. I'm eager to hear all the different aspects of career development, how you found, it seems like there are many circuitous routes that everyone takes in this, which actually I think is fabulous because it helps you explore different sides of your passion in food and your talents and skills and develop new things along the way. And in about a week and a half, I'm going to be greeting the next crop of culinology students coming in the door for the Introduction to Culinology Professions class. So my syllabus has a lot of openings. I'm always looking for guest speakers, and I'm always looking for really current, relevant, yep, all of these here, current, relevant, useful, practical information that really is going to make a difference for these new students as they're exploring the career. So thank you all of you for participating today. This is writing my syllabus for me.
Glad we can help.
And with that, we're going to go to Chef Wiley Bates III. That'd be you, Chef.
That's it. Sorry. It's just, I guess my old eyes couldn't find the unmute. But, well, good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are, everyone. Wiley Bates III. I am currently a Senior Sales Manager with IFF, International Flavors and Fragrance. And let's see, my R&D background is similar to many. I've dabbled in quite a bit of things. My most recent post prior to coming to IFF was with Yum Brands, specifically as the Global Executive Chef for Pizza Hut. And I spent several years there. A lot of what I did in my history was cutting my teeth in restaurants. And so, as you can see behind me, I'm an avid fan of the Ohio State Buckeyes and grew up right there in the capital city in Ohio. Oddly enough, Mark, my first best friend growing up on my block was from Nova Scotia. His name is Sean Conley, and he is still an awesome bud of mine. So he's the only kid I knew at 5 years old drinking a beer on his big wheel driving down the street. I'm like, that's got to be my friend. That must be my friend. So he's great family. But nonetheless, I've never been there, but I keep telling him he and I are going to meet there one day. But nonetheless, a little background on me is I was similar to kind of Barbara. What she was saying is I was a big fish in a small pond in Columbus, Ohio. We had our own version of a brat pack when it came to culinarians there. And I was fortunate enough to study under a lineage of, master chefs. And so a lot of people don't think Ohio has master chefs, but there were a few coming up in my years. But that being said, I got to work on some really nice, small 40-seat restaurants and then kind of move from there to getting an itch for consulting. I spent some time with the United States Culinary Olympic team and competed at the national level. And that was a lot of fun. But to that point, I got to really befriend a lot of people. And there was this craving to take what I've learned and share it. And so I started doing consulting for mom and pops. And then I guess I did well enough to where I had a hotel company approach me. And they wanted me to help turn their small little restaurant that was actually making zero money, turn it around and help develop a program and a menu and really do some authentic, true R&D for them. And that kind of got me the bug on really my desire to think about things differently versus working 85, 90 hours a week, 7 days a week, 6 days a week. Again, similar to Barbara, I actually decided after 15, 16 years of it that, my son was more important to be a father to than for me to be a big fish in a small pond. So I packed up and went to Dallas, Texas, where I reside now. And I was in the hotel business working for Starwood Hotels and Resorts, starting as a chef, corporate chef, and then moving over into a food and beverage director. And then from that point, things pivoted and shifted. Anyway, to fast track up to not between IFF and Pizza Hut, interesting enough, the hotel business was kind of taking a turn with some of the economical things that were happening. And so I was like, you know what, good fail safe. And a lot of what I do, love and passionate about is teaching. So I took a 2-year stint teaching locally to some culinary arts students. And we would matriculate a lot of our students out of our culinary program, which was local here in North Dallas, to universities like Texas Women's University, Sam Houston, others, so that they can complete their baccalaureate or their bachelor's for food science. And so oddly enough, that really is what struck a nerve with me to go, wow, I really like this more than being in the actual restaurant business. And so everything that I had been doing really came to full fruition by simply teaching. And so that's when I hopped into R&D with Yum Brands, and to that end had a great stint there, and chose to take a different route. I wanted to challenge myself, and moved into the sales side of the business because I wanted to kind of take a 360-degree approach on how this whole world works. I knew the culinary, I knew the R&D, I understood the sciences, and I understood the marketing, understood the finances. What I wanted to gain more access on was more of the procurement and some of the regulatory. And this has really enriched my journey so far in the 2 years that I've been with IFF. So that's the elevator speech, though it was 11 stories, 12 stories high.
Fortunately, we're apparently in Las Vegas. So, we're going to the top of the stratosphere on that one.
I'm a motor mouth. You got to give me a timer. I'm
going to text you next time, Chef. Up next is Jamie Mestan.
Can everybody hear me? We're good? Okay, I've had having issues with my headphones and I'm not anywhere near as technologically advanced as most of you. Wow, how do I follow that? I went to culinary school I was a bachelor's program person. I'm also a Kendall alum. I've had the honor of mentoring both Tamara and Lindsay, who are well on their way to being superstars in the industry. So I started as a line cook. I had no dreams of becoming anything other than a line cook. Didn't want to be an executive chef, didn't want to do anything like that. Too much work, too much paperwork. I wanted to be, you know, in the kitchen, in the fire. So I had an opportunity. My PR teacher in culinary school taught us how to write cookbooks, things like that. She was Art Smith's assistant, part-time teacher. Art Smith is Oprah's former personal chef. He ended up opening a restaurant. She's like, Jamie, I really love what you do. You know, come work for Art. You'll do great. So I helped with menu development, that kind of a thing. And then I was a line cook. It was great. It was fantastic. And then they started hiring a whole bunch of dudes. So they got pushed kind of towards like the pastries and you know, the salads, garde manger, and all that other stuff. And while I was there, I got an email from my old instructor, Chef J. Hugh McAvoy. Some of you know him, some of you don't. I think he's still with Eastbalt. He was my R&D teacher. And I say that like that because he did all the things right. He showed us, you know, acids, bases on cabbage, colors, that kind of a thing, right? But he also made us design a product. And that was fascinating. It was cool, but it was just a class. Didn't think anything of it. Called me 3 years into my line cooking. Jamie, there's a job. You'd be perfect for it. You got to go. You got to do it. What is it? Well, it's with John Dress. He was a Kendall teacher. Well, no, he was at Kendall. He wasn't my teacher. He left when I started, and people said things about him, and he's very terrifying. Well, just try it. You'll do fine. It'll be great. You're perfect. You're made for it. So I reached out. Hi, John. Oh, hi, chef, right? I was told I was supposed to come do this. He mailed me a bunch of bags of sous vide meat, told me I needed to come up with something suitable for a certain demographic at like an Applebee's or something. And I was like, okay. That was my interview. That was 12 years ago, and I haven't looked back. I got the job. I'm currently the Vice President of Culinary and Innovation for Vienna Beef in Chicago. I've started my own company, Line to Lab, that helps bridge the gap between people in the restaurant food service industries, focusing on their talents and bringing them into the world of product development in whatever kind of facet and value they bring. My main story is the whole front end of this. Everything else is a reiteration of what everybody else is going to say about how there's the product testing, there's the gold standards, there's the, you know, meeting people, there's the sales aspect, there's the networking, the associations, all that. And I've had the honor and privilege to be a part of that, both as a member and now as the treasurer for the Research Chef Association. I'm on the board of directors for that too. I went from not knowing a thing about it to diving in headfirst, and I could not be more of an advocate for every single person that I know on this call. That, you know, we are absolutely a team of people that we know what we know. And what we know runs deep. Our knowledge runs very deep in what we care about, but we also care about each other. So that's why we're doing this. So I do have to hop off in a little bit and reconnect via my vehicle, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to see the faces before I drove off into the sunset. So.
Up next is Chef John Deutsch.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kimberly, for organizing this. I love the RCA community and the good vibes you bring. And it's nice to just do this and not wait for the board. I'm sorry, Jamie. The board to make a decision to do something. We could just do something because we want to do it as colleagues. So that's great. We need that energy. So I'm John Deutsch. I'm a professor of culinary arts and science at Drexel University. I'm Ohio State University hospital baby. My parents were in grad school. I'm a CIA alum like Barbara. So actually had a little bit of a reverse. I feel like a lot of the research chefs I talked to were chefs, then get into R&D and never leave. I actually did my externship from CIA at Nestle in the Gold Standard Lab, and then cooked a little bit after that and realized that there's nothing better than doing the R&D stuff. So came back to it. I was teaching first at community college, like a couple of you, and sort of I taught at Kingsborough Community College, which is a community college for Brooklyn, and started the culinary program there and would sort of moonlight doing various R&D kind of consulting projects with contacts from my Nestle days. And then in 13 moved to Drexel, where we have an accredited culinology program and a food science master's program, and realized that, first of all, I didn't have time to keep up the consulting. And second of all, we had really talented students who wanted to get this experience. So we started something called the Drexel Food Lab, which works with some of the people on this call and a bunch of others on real world projects to engage our students. So that's been a lot of fun. And we focus on good food product development and culinary innovation. And good food is a big umbrella, but some aspect of sustainability, health promotion, or access in everything we do. Thanks.
Okay, I have Chris McAdams, and nice rocking that Colorado tee.
I had to find my unmute button. Yeah, there's like all of 4 t-shirts that I'm just cycling right now as I only exist from the house. So, you know, if we do enough calls, you're going to see all of them.
It's your Zoom shirt, right?
Yeah, right. And like I always joke, if I put on sleeves that day, it's a good day. So let's see, my background. I have an interesting one. I was kind of all over the place. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. In high school, I spent my whole time working through restaurants. I started in my first restaurant actually when I was like 13 or 14 years old. I had to get a waiver from my middle school at the time to go work there, but it was just an ice cream shop, and that's how I got started. And then I worked my way through all different types of restaurants through high school, doing everything from front of house hosting to busing to table running, and then line and prep cook and everything in between. And after that, I went into the Air Force, where I worked as a medic for 4 years. And after I got out, I really thought I was going to do something in the nutrition or hospital nutrition. So I got my undergraduate degree in human nutrition and dietetics from MSU Denver. And I worked in the hospital for a little while, just absolutely hated it. It was not a good fit for me. So I decided to transition over and thought like, oh, I'll just go make some money. So I started a degree in marketing. So I took the marketing program master's at Denver University, and then just should have known better because I can't sit as it is. So putting me in front of a computer for 8 hours a day was a really, really poor decision. So I did that program, and then I decided to switch up and sort of had that, you know, the soul searching moment where what do I really want to do? And I thought about the best times in my life, and it was always working with food. So I decided to go to culinary school after that. So it's kind of all over the place. I went to culinary school at Augusta Scafe in Boulder, and it's an accelerated 10-month program, at the end of which I did my externship with Sally Clark's of London. So I lived in London for a little while working in their kitchen, and then traveled around a bit after that. Afterwards, that was the point in which I stumbled upon the RCA, because I was looking for something a little bit different than just the restaurant job. You know, I was married at the time. I really wanted to prioritize my relationship with my wife and our ability to do things. So I was kind of looking for that the more normalcy, but still working with food. And I honestly had no idea this career field existed. And I just was Googling one day and stumbled upon the RCA. And they had, I was still in London at the time, but they had just held their annual conference in Denver, Colorado. So I was kind of bummed that I missed that out. It was a little coincidental, but they had released the award winners. So I just blind cold called everybody on the awards winners list that year, seeing if anybody was looking for an employee. And honestly, it was a real struggle for me at first because I had a pretty heavy imposter syndrome because I didn't take a culinology program. I didn't take a food science program. You know, my science was based in nutrition, which is decent, but it doesn't exactly translate over. And I had good experience in restaurants, but I hadn't exactly worked as a chef for a while. And I really thought I was going to need all of those things coming in. But I ended up getting a job offer from Allison Rittman in culinary culture, and she coached me through a lot of stuff. And what I really learned upon entering the RCA was one of the biggest benefits of being in this career field is the support network that exists. So like there's always going to be questions that you don't know the answer to, but somebody in the RCA knows the answer to it, and they're going to help you find it. So it's a really cool group. It helped me out a lot and sort of got me over that beginning imposter syndrome deal. And so now I've been in the industry for going on 5 years. I work as a culinary consultant with culinary culture. So I do work for food-based brands across the United States, all types of projects. And then I also run a food and travel blog on the side called Fork and Path. And then I also operate as a Rationale certified chef. So I do trainings for Rationale as well. And I think that's the end of my list, and I'll stop talking now.
The hook was about to come and grab you. Okay, so we now have up Josh Gaylor, who is Josh's Computron on here. And he gets to have credit for inspiring me to bring all y'all together. So the really thoughtful questions that I forwarded to some of you are actually Josh's questions. And I'm going to try and get to them, but Josh is here. There are a few others, I think, on the call who are also new to this field. So I want to give you all time to share. I also see a few other young professionals in our groups. I do want to highlight them. But Josh, we'd like to hear from you. Where, if you're willing to share, where are you at right now, and what's kind of the thought going through your head with coming into R&D?
I mean, hi everyone. We'll start there. Thanks everybody for taking the time to be here. I know that some of you have already had an email introduction with me, followed by a bunch of questions that were probably not expected. Maybe they were, I don't know. My background right now is that I've been cooking for most of my life off and on professionally for like the last 12 years in a bunch of different restaurants around Seattle and things like that, mainly focused on like fine dining and casual fine dining. Kind of just got to a point where you kind of are looking at a glass ceiling, or you're looking at working into an executive chef role, and you're going to basically kind of be at the beck and call of the restaurant, essentially chained to the stove. I know that some of us already know what that's like. So I kind of started asking myself different questions about what it is that I love about what I do. And I came to the conclusion that it's not cooking that brought me to cooking. It's my love of food. And so now it's essentially what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm trying to bridge my knowledge and my expertise of all the things that I've learned through all the kitchens that I've worked in, and try to bring that into a like food development role or a kind of sales role. I'm not really even sure, because I know that there's so many facets of this industry that exist that it's kind of hard to see the forest through the trees. So right now I'm just kind of trying to get as much knowledge as I can about what it takes to break into this industry, what that looks like, you know, that kind of thing, I guess. I kind of feel like I'm put on the spot here.
Sorry about that.
No, that's totally fine. I mean, that's why we're here though. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there
there
are 40,000 ways we could answer that.
Right.
So kind of show of hands, how many of you fell into the RCA or research chef world by Googling, or somebody blurted something out at you that you were like, wait, what's that? I'm curious what you mean. And how many of you were kind of introed into the RCA by a research chef?
Oh, that would be me.
That'd be you. I was like, hands, there are hands. Yep. And hi, Corey, Melinda. Hello, those of you who aren't on camera yet. Yeah, I think we're finding that our pathways are many to get here, right? Feel free to jump in, folks. I mean, for me, I think I shared with you, Josh, that the chef I was cooking for misheard me when I said I wanted to be an RD chef. I meant registered dietitian chef, because that's what my background is. And he totally was like, R&D is amazing. I worked for McCormick for years. And I was just like, what? You know, so I was like, okay, finish this case of potatoes and then go like follow up with him and find out what he's talking about, because you know, each of us, we just spent 40 minutes introducing ourselves because we're so passionate and our pathways were all so different, right? So, so the good news, I think, is that there's a lot of ways that you can get to R&D, and you can find a lot of really interesting careers, whether that's in sales and marketing, or constantly being asked to make lunch and applying ingredients. I think the learning curve, because I'm just going to cut to the chase, I think that some of the learning curve can be the technical knowledge and the food science and product development piece. So for some of you chefs who did not get science degrees, could you tell us, what is that learning curve like for you? What was that like for you?
Well, I'll jump in quickly and try and be brief, but basically it was long and slow, in that my curiosity was there early on. I started an apprenticeship when I was 15, and I was constantly asking my chef why we do things a certain way, why it functioned a certain way. I wanted to understand how it worked. Fast forward 20 plus years, is that this curiosity of trying to understand all these things and connecting the dots, is that when I was doing tech support and spending the afternoon sometimes in the lab with the technicians and stuff, it started to basically come out that I had a certain understanding of how things were functioning that I could help the lab technicians with as well. And then of course there's also, because I was out and interacting with customers, I could bring the customers' desire, their goals were often different than what the lab technicians' goals are. So part of R&D is really understanding what the target is. And I'm always I always love that this stupid commercial in Decatur, where this politician talks about how Lincoln always said if he had 4 days to fell a tree, he would spend 3 days sharpening his axe. And that's what we do in R&D. We spend 3 days sharpening the axe and then putting things together. So my learning curve has kind of been like those 3 days of, so it's been basically, of the 42 years, it was probably about maybe 37 years of sharpening the axe and then 6 years of really making something of myself, right? Because I didn't get a food science degree, it was a slow learning curve. But it's surround yourself with people who are willing to share. I was very fortunate in working in the research facility at ADM. I mean, 250 research scientists there, most of them with PhDs, who are very down-to-earth people who were very willing to share, and they felt they were learning from me because they didn't understand what we know as chefs, what we know as cooks and bakers and things like that. So there's a melding of two worlds that has to happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a follow-up question about that? Do you feel like your intrinsic knowledge that you might have gained from actually like the day-to-day of cooking on the line and like that kind of like almost immediate tactile feedback was something that served you well in this other aspect of the research industry?
Absolutely, because they can a lot of times they can talk molecules and everything else like that, but they really don't understand the interactions of multiple ingredients and things, and sometimes very simple things. One of the best examples I like to use for this is working on a puff pastry project, in that all they were looking at was replacing the saturated fat and making the fat hard or firm like a saturated fat to make puff pastry. And the thing that happens, of course, in puff pastry is that you have all these layers that where the steam from the dough rises up, and then the fat layer has to slowly melt so that a air pocket can be created. So creating these layers is the key part that they miss, in that understanding that if the fat can't spread and hold its shape, or maybe I'll use my hands where you can see them. If the fat can't spread and hold its shape and hold the dough in that shape, then the dough will start to pull back. And so that you start to lose those fat layerings as well. So there's a lot of other interactions that happen to understand that as you're rolling the dough out to fold it and create these layers, that the fat has to move with the dough in the same interaction, and it provides also a structure in holding the dough in place so that the gluten can't pull back when the fat is saying, no, you're not going anywhere, you're staying right here, right? And so having them understand that piece of it and creating these 144 layers, that was like a huge aha to them, because they had no idea from the food science aspect of creating this fat structuring gel as to how important that was. So for me, that was, and even now, just trying to explain, it takes a few minutes, but as a baker or as a chef who works with these things, it's like that, the knowledge. It's instant. You see exactly what's happening right away. And you can explain, it just takes a while to explain it to get through to them, right? And so, yeah, to your point, many times. And at the same time, when you start to understand some of what's going on chemically with certain things, and as you're cooking, you can have an expectation of it, or know that I need to do this or else this will happen, or things like that, right? So it becomes very intuitive and instinctive. And I think that that when you have food science only, you don't have that intuition. It's very key, and that's why when you read patents, when somebody has developed a patent for a food process or whatever, what it says is skilled in the art of. Always in terms of the things we do as cooks, as chefs, as bakers, we're skilled in the art of making puff pastry, for example, to be a little bit simplistic.
I think I'm going to chime in real quick, because that's all I do is
Yep.
take what I learned and what I know from working on the line and from being a classically trained chef cook. At the end of the day, the value I bring, I don't have a food science degree. I don't know any of that. I'm actually taking classes now so I can become a certified research chef. But we know how it's supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. We know that when you season a steak and you sear it, you want that pan screaming hot and you want that fat smoking because you want to create that. But what this industry does, and all the beautiful little parts of it, they can recreate that with chemicals, with flavors, with science. They can create something that we know how it's supposed to be. So at the end of the day, all of that hard work, all of those burns, all of those cuts, all of those meals that you've made, that's the experience that you bring. So you know at the end of the day that what you say is the final answer, the final piece of the puzzle. If you're making an au jus, you know how to make an au jus. You need pan drippings, you need a thickener, you need love, right? In our world, we can get fatty beef flavor, we can get rare beef flavor, and then add that to water and beef stock and call it a day. But when we taste it, we know what those gold standards are supposed to taste like, which, to Chef's point, food scientists don't, food technologists don't, or they might, who knows? Yeah. But the value you bring is all that experience that you have working in a kitchen.
Yeah, exactly to your point, Jamie, it's like working with flavorists, what they can't get over from us is that we can taste it in our head. We know what we expect to taste. And when they describe it, they use a lexicon of descriptors that to help guide them with standardizing things. But to you and me, when we are seasoning a steak and searing it in a pan and putting the drippings together, we already can taste that in our brain as far as how that is supposed to taste and what our gold, like Jamie was saying, what that gold standard is. So, and we bring that to the food science world. That doesn't discredit food science at all. It's just that's why I say there's a melding. There's both parts are very important and supportive of each other when it comes to the whole R&D thing.
And Josh, my transition was actually a bit shocking, right? Because I was very confident in my abilities as a cook and a chef. And then this was a whole different world. And Mark was saying a whole different language. So we learned a kitchen language, and we learned the language of cooks and how to prepare and using all of our senses. But then this was a whole different way of looking at food. So really, I would suggest be open-minded about it, because there used to be kind of a stigma attached to industry, which is pretty much gone now, thank God. And you could be still a great chef and just think about food in a different way. And use your team, use the food technologists, use the food scientists, join the RCA. I know I was on the board for 5 years. It really will help propel the networking alone and the industry association will really help propel your career. And if you're in Seattle, I'm in Seattle, we could get together and connect if you want.
Yeah, that would be great. I actually was in contact with Travis as well.
Oh, Travis, yeah.
Yeah, we've been kind of just missing connections, but I was supposed to go to one of the meetups like right before everything shut down and stuff.
Yeah.
Before everybody wore their pajamas for like 3 months.
Yeah. But
So,
it might be the takeaway is that it might be shocking and it might feel a little intimidating at first.
right.
But you're solid in your skill set and trust in your skill set and trust in what you know, and just be willing to expand your mind and just think about things a little bit differently, or maybe a lot differently, but it'll be growing and it'll be very rewarding. I do believe.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I just, for me at least professionally, it's like the one thing I can't get out of my head is like what brought me to cooking was my love of food. Like,
right.
I love food. I have all of these skills, and now it's just like I've been spending so much time thinking about how do I marry my ability to cook and to marry flavors and do all these things and like get people excited about that. But then how do I take that and commute it into something that's not just a restaurant? Like, because that was always my focus. It was just
right.
And then
it's definitely a change in your mindset for sure. And it could feel, like I said, shocking was a word that I used. It was shocking to me, but it could be in a good way, shocking in a good way. And it can open up a whole nother world of learning to you that you won't get in a restaurant, because you'll get to a certain level, but not very often when you're working the line are you thinking about the science of it, or you're thinking about what it's going to look like to a consumer, or how it's going to feel to a consumer, or how the packaging affects it. So yeah, it's a good way to take another big step in your career forward.
That's really awesome feedback. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
If I can build on both Mark and Barbara's points, one of the things that I was excited about when I made the transition from restaurants, from the world of fine dining or upscale casual to R&D, was that I found myself, and I'm dating myself, but found myself to be the Captain Crunch decoder ring for food scientists. When I first came in and I met all of these PhDs, and they're like, damn it, this is ridiculous. We've matched the flavor, and they just can't understand what we're talking about. They don't listen to us. And what became about was, as a culinary minded person, I was being able to use both left brain and right brain. So I was taking the sciences that they were saying, and I'm like, well, first off, as soon as you said diacetyl, or as soon as you said something of that, or analogs or things, you just shut down the entire operational marketing team, CEOs, all the key decision makers within that R&D center. They just shut down. They just drooled, and that was it. It was a SpongeBob SquarePants moment. Anyway, taking the culinary. Everybody has a culinary experience. So you, Josh, going from a restaurant, I remember lineups. That was one of my favorite things to do. Get my entire staff. I go, here's the lineup tonight. Here's what we want you to promote. This is a foie gras that's been, pan-seared beautifully. It's going to be finished with a fig jus, topped with some microgreens and da-da-da-da. You go on to sell this dish. And so it's really converting the sciences into the art. And that's the beauty of where we all sit now from a culinology perspective. Is that blending of the arts and the sciences. And I think that's where we have, in my personal opinion, a competitive edge, because we are actually trained to communicate to John Q. Public, right? Versus having such a strong depth and knowledge of the science and not being able to convert that. That is often a challenge on a lot of the really talented people that I've worked with over the years. And so that's just my 2 cents, in the sense of, don't lose that passion, don't lose that sense of wonder and that sense of love for food. Just making sure that translates, and you're pulling the sciences with that. And that blending, I guarantee you, you'll get double for your trouble.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, like hearing more about how we can take that experience from the line or from leading teams and working those difficult situations, development of food, even on the fly. knowing that that kind of stuff is going to be communicated in a positive way, and that kind of science aspect, I think, is going to be really helpful.
So let's talk about getting a job then. So if Josh, you're going to find that a lot of us, once we've identified you, we're going to start throwing ideas and opportunities at you. I have found that this group of people really takes care of our own, whether you come with a food science background or an adjacent type of background. If you've somehow ended up in our group, we will nag the heck out of you until we find a place for you, and then we'll follow your career wherever you end up going. So, I mean, Corey knows this. We've been following him around. Melinda knows this. They were both student members. And, you know, we are all really excited for career growth, you know, whatever point you jump in. So, you know, Chef Barbara is already in Seattle. I pretend to be in Seattle every now and then. You know, that's two hot bodies right there. And then, whoops, warm bodies. And, you know, then there's also Chef Jamie. She has the line to lab, like actual consulting to get somebody ready to get into the R&D world. So I did want to say, like, Chef John and I have both taken a culinology class online, and I think a few others have sat for either the CRC or the CCS. Who in this current room has taken one of those exams? I think it's just me. Okay. And then are any of you studying for it? Are you still Chef Wiley, Chef John? Okay. So either of you?
In April at the conference, but now I can't find it remote. So
You need a proctor, right?
September I'll be able to get in person to take
Okay.
it.
So do you want to talk about why you decided to go for the CRC and get this exam, and maybe kind of preface with what it is for Josh?
Yeah. So the certified research chef is and there's the CCS, right? The certified culinary scientist, are credentials offered by the RCA. Basically certifying your knowledge and experience in the field. It's really more a personal challenge. It's not like it's gonna open, I already have a job. I don't think I'll get any sort of, recognition really necessarily for it. But I think, like a lot of chefs, my food science education was really spotty. I probably learned more working as a research chef than taking any formal education in food science. So for me, it was a good opportunity to really push myself to learn things properly and sit down and read the textbook and, not just kind of know enough to get by in certain categories and just hope I don't get a question out of my comfort zone food science wise.
With that being said, do you feel that if you had a certification going into trying to like break in, do you feel like that would have served you well?
Yeah, I mean, I started in the 90s. There was no such thing as a research chef or an RCA or any of this. It was just chef. It was mostly like Swiss. At Nestle, it was like Swiss and French hotel chefs who, their knees hurt and their back hurt and they become a research chef. Okay. But I think for sure now, it's a really good sign for an employer that first of all, you're knowledgeable, and second of all, that this is not a fallback position. I think a lot of us who are teachers or in R&D, we get chefs who are burnt out from the line applying for jobs, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that shouldn't be the number one reason, right? Like I interview people and they're like, for education jobs, and they're like, oh, I want to slow down. I'm like, really? Are you going to say that in a job interview? And that's exactly who you don't want. And so I think having the certification or even taking the courses, if you're still working towards the certification, kind of sends a message that this is not to get out of what would be considered a real job or a tough job. This is because you want to move your career in this direction.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
And
Something
although
that
I'm a little more advanced in age, before ADM rolled out this early retirement offering that I took last year, um, it was basically on my plate. Was something that I was looking to do. I purchased the books. I was looking to sign up for the courses and stuff, and my goal was to sit for the exam in at the RCA this past conference, whether I would have passed or not. And then the whole retirement thing threw a wrench in the works and all that. Then, well, why spend all the time and the money when I don't really need it anymore? I was going to do it more for within the corporate world. The letters, having a letters behind your name helps with positions and opportunities. You'll start to find that, yeah, there's a lot of PhDs and they have those 3 letters, but sometimes all it means pile it higher and deeper, right? And it's just they're not always. That's what we call them.
Sorry, I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And some of them are like that, honestly. But I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of very bright people who've been very supportive. But it's one of those things. Being in the corporate world, the letters help. It's a qualification. It also helps with, of course, a lot of people still want to come to the U.S. and Canada for a better life. So if you have that designation, you have a leg up on anybody who's trying to immigrate and fill that position, so that it makes it that much harder for them to take that job away from you, so to speak. And so in that sense, it has a great deal of value, right? Just like, RCA has been around with this accreditation not long after the American Culinary Federation got all their ducks in a row with their accreditations. And so IFT, they realized, well, they need to come up with something themselves too. So there's people who have all of them, right? You can get certified as a culinary educator. There's all kinds of different things out there. The RCA certification, the CRA, is just one that is very all-encompassing. The questions are about 80% food science and 20% culinary for the CRA. And
there's an update to that, actually.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, it's now
More
supposed to be 50% product development, and then
okay.
yeah. So it's a little less like a trivia test now. But yes, it is supposed to be a fair evaluation of someone's experiences in product development. So was it Jonathan who said maybe read the texts and maybe take the courses? I don't know if I would sit for the exam just yet. I think being a candidate for that exam is almost as valuable. And then with the expectation that you will execute on taking that. Probably the CRC for you after some time. But I don't think it would be a terrific experience to go take a product development exam without having survived a few product developments. There's really nothing like standing on a line and watching all of your last 9 months of work get dumped on the floor for whatever reason. Usually because somebody forgot to close a fucking
filling
valve.
a dumpster with
But,
when did it change, Kimberly?
Pardon?
When did it change?
A year and a half ago.
Yeah, probably after the book came out, basically.
Oh, definitely after the book.
Yeah.
When John and I went through the culinology course last year, it had just changed.
Yeah.
So
But that makes sense. Then it's in line with the culinology text itself, because otherwise the focus was always a bunch of different food science textbooks that they recommended.
It's still a hodgepodge of textbooks.
There's a lot of different texts to read for that test. Yes,
there are. I was lucky this round of the culinology course. Actually, Chris McAdams sent me his textbooks, so I didn't have to go buy them. So yeah, we snail mailed each other books like old school style. So, um, yeah, and
All about that teamwork.
yeah, exactly. And thank you. Although, so I took the exam in 2015. So I had been in product development as a titled product developer for 3 years and then sat for the exam. And I think that would be my recommendation. You probably want 2 to 3 years before you actually sit for the exam. I definitely don't discourage you from reading the books in advance, but quite frankly, who's going to read those books unless they have an exam like and skin in the game? Bluntly, professors, you tell me if you read textbooks for
I don't know.
fun.
I have time right now, so that's like also something that I'm looking at is that like I'm also not working full time, so I'm also like if I'm gonna jump on something like that's why like the consensus about the accreditation for me is kind of a big one because I'm like, it's like if I have the time to look at it right now and if it's gonna assist in me actually getting a job like quicker or something that will be at least a little bit more
well, one of the other advantages to consider if you get into R&D a bit, like Kimberly was suggesting, is that with a lot of the larger companies, well, again, like I worked for ADM, they will pay for it. You don't have to lay out the $700 to do the exam. The company pays for it.
Gotcha.
I'll be a total outcast and say that I read textbooks for fun. And I think if you want to even know if you're interested in product development or just want to get a feel for it, the culinology book is a good place to start.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good collection, a whole lot of resources. We're working on updating our curriculum for our Introduction to Food Science course, which I teach every spring. That's one of my tasks this fall, is to kind of completely revamp that curriculum and update it. We have new competencies for all of the culinology education programs that just came out last year. So I'm trying to make sure that our textbooks refer to those. But we're also making a huge move to utilizing free open educational resource textbooks online. So I'm starting to put together modules of content from various sources online that are free. So rather than having to buy a big stack of textbooks, there would be a collection of resources. So as I start putting it together, I'm going to float that to our other education programs and have everybody kind of vet things. But that may be something that will be available through the RCA ultimately also, is some self-study modules with free online content that you can review.
There's such a need for that, right? Especially right now. Yeah, that's great.
I agree. Yeah.
Otherwise, Josh, I literally have, I think, 180 pounds worth of books on a shelf in storage. And I know-ish where you live. So yeah, you might just want, I mean, if you want 200 pounds of textbooks for right now, Chef Sarah is the other person who's in line to get them. So
I'm reading now.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring the culinology book to you. And if honestly, if you go through that textbook and want to continue consuming content, I would say that's a pretty fair indicator that you're going to love product development. It does go into some detail that you're just like, oh my gosh, unless I have to do this project, I probably don't have to become a master of this topic. Which is where I kind of want to pivot to Chris McAdams. You've been fairly quiet. You went from cooking in restaurants to working for a consultancy. So different than working for, a big ingredient company like Chef Wiley and me. Chef went to corporate first and then to an ingredient company. It's a different experience, right? So talk to us about the consultancy piece.
Well, first of all, I just need to call out that that's the first time anybody's ever said I'm quiet. So yes. So it definitely is interesting being a consultant. The biggest difficulty with being a consultant is you're kind of out there on your own, which is why the RCA becomes so important. When you work in a larger company, you're usually part of a large group that has people that you can always turn to ask questions, for support, for coaching, leadership, all of that kind of stuff. I come from a military background, so having like the supervisor that you can fall back on and always ask questions, and the books and everything else that sort of line everything up, it's a great way to be, but it's also a very systematic way to be, and not everybody fits in that sort of shoebox. And I think that was a great way for me to start. But then as I grew as a professional, I became much more limber in my ability to learn and execute. And I found that I was actually very well suited to working on my own outside of a team. I still can work within a team as needed, but I definitely thrive sort of on my own, in my own environment, on my own schedule. And that's what being a consultant provides you. It's definitely it's a feast or famine type of lifestyle. So like sometimes I'm booked out, 14 out of 15 days, and I just have to go head first into it. And then there's other times where I may have, 4 to 6 days off, but there's just not much to do. It tends to be pretty consistent, but it's really, you have to have that self-starter, go get 'em attitude. You have to be confident in the decisions you're making. And most of all, you have to realize that the onus is entirely on you. So if you get it right, great. Everybody gives you a pat on the back. But if you get it wrong, you're the only one to blame. So you can't be like, oh, I got bad information or whatever else it is, because you are the primary source of information. So you're expected to know these things. And again, whenever I think about that, it always just goes back to how helpful and supportive it is to be in the RCA, because like I said, I didn't come in with a deep science background. So there's sometimes I have questions, man, I just have no idea what I'm doing with it. So I need to reach out to another specialist. And people like Kimberly have helped me a lot with projects in the past and got me sort of over that hump and into a position that we came out on the positive side of things. So it is a balance, but it's a lot of fun as well. I honestly wouldn't give it up for anything. I never knew this was my dream job, but now that I'm in it, I do realize that it is. I have fun every day. It's always something different. I do anything from just trend research. I write blogs for 3 different companies. I do gold standard development. I do commercialization. I've built restaurants across the United States from the ground up, including training the staff. Like it's a really cool environment for that, just the flexibility and the constant changing. But you also have to be willing to do that. And some people, it's just hard to be there. There's times where I'm doing literally 6 projects in 1 week, and I have to constantly shift my focus. And all of those projects could be completely different. Some could be savory, some could be sweet, some could be beverage related. And so like I have to just switch my brain from one to the other to make sure that I'm focusing on the correct ingredients or executions or processes and things like that. One thing that's really fun about it is, and just cut me off if you need to, Kimberly, is that you kind of get to become a MacGyver for solutions in some cases, because I don't have access to a big corporate facility with all of the millions of dollars of equipment. So like I've built an in-house retort system out of a pressure cooker before, like to try to mimic processes and see how things perform. So you really can get creative and do a lot of fun stuff with it. And it's challenging, and that's what I love about it. It's always a challenge.
Chris, you get props for that, man. That's good.
Impressive.
That was a tough one. It was we needed to figure out how this ingredient was going to survive in a retort application. I was like, how am I going to create a retort in my house? So
I'm going to ask you about that. That is good.
it was pretty fun. I couldn't get them. I really wanted to get one of those submersible. I can't think of the name of it, but it measures like the pressure and the heat inside of a product, and then you pull it out and you plug it in, and it gives you all the readout. And I couldn't get one of those, so I had to rig a system where I could take the product immediately out of the pressure cooker, and I had the little access port that I built in there, and I jammed the thermometer in there to get the central temperature. But then the moment you take the thermometer out, the whole product just explodes because it's under so much pressure. So I had like sleeves all the way up my arms, the tank on. I was just like ripping it out in the sink and watching it explode. But it was fun. I mean, it's fun, we're playing with food, so life can't be that bad.
That is a good point.
I have a contact in Japan who needs your insights, Chris. So that's
You two get in touch.
You let me know. I'm happy to help.
I have a question for Chef Wiley, because you and I are both away from the bench twice over. So we went from restaurants to an R&D job, and now you are the senior sales. I forgot your title already.
Sales guy.
Sales guy.
Sales guy.
and Chef Barbara, you have experience as a salesperson as well. Let's talk about that as a career option real quick. I'll start with Chef Wiley. Tell us about that type of work, and how does it feel actually to be off the bench?
It's weird. It's very weird. you know, it's kind of a lot of what I was kind of sharing with Josh and his points of, I am still passionate. I absolutely love food. I love food. I love talking about food. I love creating. I love that side of, you know, that artistic side of the brain where you're just blending things. And from a sales perspective, it was a 180 pivot on my mindset. It was an absolute shift. But it was an intentional point for me to make myself uncomfortable when it comes to, you know, my career path in that regard. To that end, I can't say I've completely abandoned it. There are days as I work with my customers, and granted, yeah, we have at IFF, you have an arsenal of chefs, both globally and here in the United States. There's a nice large amount of chefs who can actually get on the bench and do what's required. But oftentimes, you know, if and when the opportunity arises and someone might need some help, someone might say, hey, you have culinary background. Actually, there's a specific customer I have in mind that still sees me as Chef Wiley. And oddly enough, a lot of people still call me that because that's how they knew me versus just Wiley, you know, the sales guy at IFF. But that being said, back to that blending of the arts and the sciences. And now I'm learning the sciences of sales, but yet I still will bring the culinary mindset with me. And so every now and again, I'll throw an apron on. If someone says, hey, you know, had a question about dough. I love baking in general, like mainly just leavened breads, but specifically to that, being able to craft a dough and tinker around or help them understand, you know, how a biga works in contrast to, using, different starters and things of that nature. And it brings that kind of energy back up to be able to kind of share my wealth of knowledge, but quite frankly, in a different way. From a sales perspective, my biggest challenge is really finding that balance and the approach. And when I think about my approach has always been through food. My approach has always been through culinary sciences per se. And now I'm reaching others in areas of marketing, reaching others in area of sensory and or marketing insights, and or around the boardroom table. Being able to have a top-to-top conversation with, chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief, executive officer who, and I love this because I actually lived it. Back to you, everyone talking about, hey, go make me lunch. My favorite in R&D was the shower moments, where, hey, Wiley, I was in the shower and, oh my God, I had this great idea. I know it's going to sell. I have no culinary experience, but I guarantee you it's just $1 million idea. And then they share those kind of ideas and you have to go run off to the bench to do it. Well, now, I have the opportunity to kind of speak differently to an idea like that. And so when I think about the sales perspective, I now have the opportunity to maybe change the dynamics of that conversation to get them to maybe back off and allow the R&D people, the people who actually have the product knowledge, who have that know-how, who have the years of experience to be able to really change and modify that idea to something that's actually really tangible. So it's ever changing every day. Now, I'll admit on the sales side, the thing that I actually do enjoy is the amount of engagement that I get to talk to a lot of people. I get to help problem solve for a lot of people. And sometimes that's painful. And other times that's really enjoyable because there's never a dull moment. Every day is different. And so that is a lot different than me coming in to work, setting up my station, brewing the coffee at the same time after I clocked in per se, answering my emails for the first 30 minutes and then hitting that to-do list that I've, constructed, the day before. And so it's definitely a different mindset, but at the end of the day, if I'm learning, I'm growing. And that's what's really important to me as I continue to grow in my career. Did that help?
Thank you. We're going to go to Chef Barbara. And I will say, I have a meeting at 4:30, so I'm going to have to disappear. I can leave the call on for y'all to continue talking. You can just hang up when you're done. But I'm going to go to Chef Barbara for her experiences as well. So I'll go there.
Thanks. So with sales, yeah, what Chef Wiley said about a 180, for me, I tried, it can be a 180 and dealing with very different types of people who think very differently than chefs do is definitely a transition. For me though, I tried not to make it such a 180 because I always led with my culinary skills. I always led, well, when you talk about your love for food and your passion and your excitement, and other chefs on the call have said about knowing how things go together and knowing how something's supposed to work. I always saw myself as a value add, other than at the time when I started sales, not too many chefs were in sales. So a lot of the sales guys were just those sales guys who just did the rote memorization of pricing and didn't know much about the product. So my experience and anybody's experience, I think, look at it as a value add. If you're culinary, if you're technical, if you're scientific, it's a value add because you know how to put things together and you know how to move something forward and you know how to produce a product and you know how to scale up a product. And these are all skills that you can use in your arsenal to beat a competitor when you're out there talking to somebody, because you can build a relationship by utilizing these skills, and you can get someone to trust you by having that confidence, and you have an arsenal of experience in your background that people don't come across every day. And if you can learn to talk about those skills in a way that your customer will understand, you'll do very well. And you also abide by the same principles as mental mise en place, is the same thing as being prepared for a call, talking to somebody, communicating effectively absolutely bring those skill sets into sales. So there's a lot of ways that if you, again, just think about it a little bit differently and trust that you have a wealth of knowledge that not everybody has. And if you have the right intention of assisting that customer to help their business and pay that business forward and make them more profitable, you'll do well in sales.
Yeah, what I wanted to just sort of add what Barb has touched on there, what really stood out for me is getting them to trust you. And Chef Wiley has been doing the same thing in the way what he described. It's it's the same idea. It's basically giving them a sense that you have empathy and understand what it is they're dealing with, and that in that trust, that it's not so much trusting that whether you're gonna steal their recipe or anything like that. It's trusting that you care as much or close to as much as possible about their business and what they're trying to accomplish, and that that you want to succeed as much as they do, and that you're not just trying to baffle them with BS. You're trying to actually help them with your knowledge and their knowledge combined. Like when you're running on a line, like Kimberly was talking earlier, I mean, it happens. Sometimes you make a dumpster full of garbage, but as long as you both decided to do that and take a chance with it, then you can just still go to bed and think that you did your best and you know what you're going to run tomorrow, and it's not going to happen again, right? So that trust is really key, and
so important.
Yeah, I would agree. I had one more value add I wanted to mention, and I talked about it on Peas and Moss on a podcast with Kimberly. Everybody's in sales when you get right down to it. Everybody's in sales. Whether you're a chef trying to sell your idea to a server to sell it to a customer, whether you're an R&D person trying to sell it in to get on the marketing calendar so that it gets launched from a brand perspective, whether you're a husband trying to get your wife just to buy the gallon of your favorite ice cream versus her favorite ice cream. Everybody's in sales in some capacity. And yes, that's an actual ice cream argument that I have at home, but I'm a resident fat kid around here, so whatever. But at the end of the day, I share that with some of the up and coming students that I talk to on a regular basis, and some of the kids that I mentor here in the Texas region. Is you have to put that hat on. You have to put the R&D scientist hat on, the chef's hat on, the finance hat on, the HR hat on. I mean, you have all those components, and to be well-rounded in all of those areas sets you above the person that's like, hey, I'm just going to show it with my food. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to show it with my food. I love that passion from an up-and-coming young chef. However, when you think about where we are today from a culinology perspective, absolutely different ball game. You really have to be well-rounded versus a jack of one trade per se. Hopefully that makes sense.
All right, so Kimberly asked me to go ahead and help out finishing up the conversation here since she had to step off. So I just want to jump in. She let me know that there were still two chefs that hadn't had the opportunity to speak. One is Kate, and I want to make sure she gets an opportunity to tell her story. And then also Aisha, but I don't see her on the call anymore. She may have left unless I'm just blind. But Kate, why don't you go ahead and take it away? And if Aisha, if you're on there, you're up.
Hi, sorry I was late. It's been a crazy day at my house. But I am the co-chair of the Pacific Northwest RCA with Travis. And actually Travis, I knew him from a previous engagement. And then I went to an event and I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? And he's like, hey, whatever. And so that's how I became involved with the RCA. So a little bit roundabout way. I've only been the co-chair for 2 years. I got into product development more after cooking, restaurants, catering, private cooking. And then I had an opportunity to work with Maxime Belay, and he's a crazy dude. And then kind of went from there to Tom Douglas doing menu development. And then I've had a couple contracts with Starbucks and Nestle. I do have a nutrition food science degree. I went to culinary school. But I think a lot of being the chef part is being able to speak about food and speaking well to describing flavor profiles, because when I learned being at Starbucks and Nestle is that they have the food science degrees and they have the science behind it, but they don't know how to make something that tastes good or describe how to market it to making it taste good. So I think that is a huge help in you do know what it tastes like. You do know how to describe things, especially I have a wine and beverage education as well. So being a sommelier and, knowing how to describe the palate and food. So I think that is a huge benefit in coming from the culinary world into going into a product development world.
Awesome, thank you. And I did see Aisha was still on the call, so that is your turn, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aisha. I'm actually from India, but I'm a student studying culinology in Malaysia. So I just wanted to actually know more about this industry and what happens behind it. That's why I actually wanted to join this talk, and it was very nice listening to the industry experts. Yeah, that's all from me.
Awesome. Did anything come up along the way, Aisha, that didn't get answered? Were there any other questions popping up along the way?
Not really, because I had a few questions in mind, but that was already answered from the talk.
Awesome. Well, that makes life really easy. I just wanted to kind of close out on my end by just saying, like, I kind of mentioned earlier how tight-knit this community is, and it's also pretty long-lasting. And the example of that is actually Wiley, believe it or not, is the first research chef outside of Allison that I ever met in this industry. We did a project together when I was living in Austin. He had to come down there. And it was so fun to meet him because I was kind of like, man, if everybody in the industry is like Wiley, then I'm going to do just fine. And it turned out, yeah, pretty much everybody is just like Wiley. So it's like it's a big group of like-minded people who we work really hard, but we also enjoy every moment of what we do. So it tends to most of us have a pretty positive outlook, and everybody just wants to help everybody. We're always happy to take a call, get a cup of coffee, answer a question, shoot out an email on your behalf. Like it's a very community-based group, and that's one of the things I love the most about it. So saying that is kind of my way of wrapping up and saying that if anybody ever needs anything, like that's why this group exists. That's why the RCA exists. Like we're here to support one another. I'm the regional chair out in Rocky Mountain Central. So if anybody is in my area, shoot me a message, let me know. We got to get to know each other a little bit better. But other than that, if anybody has any other closing questions or closing comments, jump in now.
I just want to say thanks for everybody to take the time to talk and be able to answer some of the questions. I know that A lot of us are really busy, and so the time to sit down and do a Zoom call and stuff is appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I
this
think
has
I
been
speak.
really great. I'm glad Kimberly organized this, and I'm always happy to share. And I think that one of the things that we end up doing as chefs versus cooks is that we end up naturally mentoring and supporting each other. It's something that kind of distinguishes you from being just a cook or a laborer as to someone who is a leader, and that's what we all are, and that is why this organization is so great.
Well, it's nice
Awesome.
to meet everybody and see some familiar faces as well. This is a good call.
And I wanted to say too, Corey just put up some job announcements in the chat. So thank you, Corey, for that. It's good to know various places for students to look at examples of what jobs are out there too. And it's good for me because I can bolster our program by showing, hey, there's all these jobs, there's these salary levels, there's these many options for, you know, different ways that people can take their passion for food into the industry. So thank you for sharing those. And thanks everyone for your comments. This is I took 3 pages of notes and I may be contacting some of you to get some more quotes that I can share with my students. And again, opportunities to speak to the next generation of potential research and development chefs is, it's a great thing that you have so much to offer that students could really gain from. So thank you for what you've shared today.
Sure
Wiley,
thing.
you have an open invitation to come to Cape Breton any day.
Oh, absolutely. Keep the brews cold. I'm on my way. You all have a great night.
Take care.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
everybody.
All right.
Thanks
Cheers.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.